Hi, I'm Lance Lambert. Thanks for tuning into the Vintage Vehicle Show. We are in Stanwood, Washington at the Dan Jubie collection. This is a great selection of cars. I've heard about this for a long time. Finally got to see the collection recently, was really impressed. Asked Dan if we could come back and do an episode here, and he enthusiastically said yes. So Dan, come on in here. How you doing?
Good.
Good. Thank you very much for having us here.
Thanks for coming.
How did this all come about? You've built quite the little palace here and a good selection of cars.
Well, I actually got started from my father. He was into cars when I was a little kid, and I got interested that way, and then I just started building cars a long time ago, and I never get rid of anything. I just get one done and park it and start on another one.
A lot of GM in here. You have a Ford snuck in here and there, but a lot of General Motors in this room. Why the preference for that?
No, I had a Ford when I was a kid, and I was racing some guy with a Chevrolet, and I got beat. So that kind of ended my thing for Fords.
Okay, can we take a look around?
Sure, absolutely, yeah.
Okay, let's go look. Dan, I've always loved 59 Chevs, probably of all the years ever of Chevrolets. This is the most radical design. How did you come into ownership of this?
Well, I was at Hot August Nights in 1995, and I saw this car drive through a parking lot down there, and I talked to the guy about it. And I didn't realize it at the time, but it was for sale, and we worked a deal over the phone. I flew to San Francisco and then drove the car back.
The design on the 59s is so radical. It almost looks like it landed from outer space.
Yeah, they're pretty radical. I like the looks of it. I had it in Marysville one time. I was driving down the street with it, and two kids come up and driving an Acura or something. The guy looks at it and he says, "What kind of car is that?" He said, "Did you make that?"
Well, you were the previous owner. Have shaved the door handles off and pearlescent paint. Is that kind of where your leanings are to mild custom, or do you like them stock, or what's your taste?
Mild custom. I put the grill in it, and I did some engine compartment work, changed it over to a 4-speed, but it looked pretty much this way when I got it. I like they're low and the smooth, no door handles and stuff. It makes them look good.
Running gear on this? What is it?
That's a 283 right now. It's got a 4-speed. I got a 409 in the other room I'm going to put in it when I get some of my other projects caught up.
One of the secrets on keeping cars tugging at your heart the whole time you own them, I think, is subtlety. And this, it's pearlescent paint and the shaved door handles, but it's still, this could have been built in 1960 and look just like this and still be tasteful now. Any thoughts on what you should and shouldn't do to a car?
I think you should pick a theme, pick an era, and stay in it. I see cars at mild custom, 50 customs, and they got wide white walls and a billet steering wheel. I mean, pick an era and stay in it. That's one of my pet peeves when guys don't do that.
Yeah. And right next to it is one that pretty flashy, but it is, for the most part, the first glance is all stock. Can we focus on that a little bit?
Sure.
Okay. The 59 is pretty radical with the sideways fins on it. 61, they start getting a little more conservative looking again. 62, like this one, a great looking car, but not as radical as the 59. Why do you think that General Motors started getting a little more conservative looking?
I think as time went on, that glitzy idea, I think it just kind of went away. People got to be a little more conservative, maybe. This car, when I was a kid, a neighbor guy had one of these. I was about 14, he was about 18, and I used to wash his car for him. $2 a job.
Good
and
money.
I always wanted one as a result of that, so that's kind of why I got this one.
This is pretty flashy, red, and you've got a 4-speed floor shift on it, and you've done some alterations on the running gear. Tell us about that.
Well, when I got the car, it was a 305 with an automatic, and it had the stock suspension, the stock brakes, and it didn't drive real well. So my initial intent was just to put a 4-speed in it, and I did that, and then a friend of mine came up with a 327 motor. So I pulled the motor out, which eventually led to a frame-off detail. I changed the front suspension and put the later steering, disc brakes, and stuff on it.
So you like them altered? You don't want to leave them stock?
Nah, I don't like 4-speeds, high revving motors, so fast.
Some performance.
Yeah.
Any reaction from the general public on this? Do you have the hardcore guys say, "Why'd you put those wheels on it, and why is that floor shift in it?" Or does everybody really appreciate it?
Well, most of the guys I hang with are street rod guys. I don't hang around the purists too much. I got a car that's completely stock and totally original, and one's enough.
I went to a Chevrolet convention, and I had a street rotted 52 Chev, and they almost lynched me. I barely came out of there alive.
Those purists are a group of their own, that's for sure.
But, well, this is really, the red on red is just great. This is really a good looking car. We've got a couple of Chevrolets here. We have something totally different down at the end there. It's bright yellow. I don't think there's anything similar. Maybe the running gear is similar, but sure doesn't look like this. Let's go take a look at that.
Sure.
All right. Well, we talked about a couple of Chevrolets that, you know, pretty streamlined, pretty sleek. Man, this is totally different than that. A 50s Willys, 1950 Willys. Tell us about this.
Well, a lot of the cars I have are a result of a childhood memory. When I was a kid, there was a guy that lived up the road from us, and he had one of these. It was that old army green color. Had a small block Chevy in it, and I just thought it was cool. And I ran across this one over in Wenatchee. A guy in an apple orchard had it over there, so I bought it, and it was the same army green with the yellow wheels and the Jeep can and stuff. And my initial intent was just to bring it home, put a V8 in it, and have a little cruiser. But I wound up making the straight axle thing with the fender well headers and the slicks and all that, kind of reminiscent of the old gassers.
How is it that, how do you think it is that something that, I mean, look at the fenders on this. Talk about boxy and this phone booth cab, and it is so different than what, you know, the sleek stuff out of the fat fenders in the 40s and the sleek in the 50s and 60s. But in the sweeping statement, but in general, most of the car community, the street rod community, love these Willys. Why do you think a design that is so boxy and different is still popular?
Well, I think just because it's so much different. The thing is so ugly, it's actually good looking. I mean, all the windows are a different height. It's got square corners and nothing fits properly, but it just, when you get it all done, it just kind of works. It's just, I don't know, I guess because the Chevys and the Fords were way smoother, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, you mentioned the small block, and you're keeping the Chevy theme going.
Oh yeah.
Performance is pretty good?
Yeah, it runs hard. It does.
And when you roll into a show in this vehicle, they're not rare, but you don't see them very often. Right. What kind of reaction are you getting from people?
Well, the motor's real radical. It's got a real radical cam in it, and whenever I can get away with it, have the headers open. So people just love the sound of it, I think, more than anything. But
Dan, I don't know how it was in your neighborhood when you were growing up, but in my neighborhood, every other guy had a doodlebug or a go-kart or some bicycle that he hacked together, a Briggs and Stratton on or whatever, something like this. This was really upscale. Nobody in my neighborhood had one of these. What a cool thing. And this is a real Whizzer. Tell us about it.
Well, actually, I got into restoring bicycles several years ago, and I went to a bicycle swap meet because I needed some parts for a bike I was working on, and this was there. And I walked up and looked at it, and the price that the guy was asking was just a staggering amount. And I thought, who'd be crazy enough to spend that much money for a bicycle with a motor on it? But as I got to talking to some people that knew this guy, I found out it was a pretty good buy. So I really couldn't afford it. I didn't really have a place to put it, and I didn't really need it, but yet I just couldn't walk away.
It's a motorcycle, it's a bicycle. Is it more bike than motorcycle, or more motorcycle than bike, and how does it perform?
Well, it's more bicycle, and I've only ridden it twice. This thing will go about 35, 38 miles an hour, which is way too fast to be riding this bicycle. And I was afraid, first of all, I'd fall off it and scratch it up, and secondly, I'd hurt myself. So, yeah, it's more bicycle.
How many cc's is that?
I'm not really sure. I think it's like 25.
So it's just a little guy.
Yeah, it doesn't have much power, but it's geared pretty tall, so it takes it a while to get momentum worked up, but once it does, it gets a little high-speed wobble at about 33, 34. It's kind of scary.
You have a lot of bicycles here. I've noticed in the car community, you went into any collection 10, 15 years ago, there were no bicycles in there. Now there's a lot of bicycles.
Yeah.
And you used to be able to go on eBay, Craigslist, whatever, and buy a cool old funky bicycle for 25 bucks. Now you're paying 325 or 625. What happened?
Well, I think as the popularity grew, I mean, it seems like every car guy wants to relive his childhood. You know, I still build model cars and collect die-cast cars, bicycles. I think these guys now, they're trying to relive that time, and now they have the money to buy this stuff, and it just drives the price up.
Yeah, a friend of mine recently said that, and he's quoting somebody, I'm sure, but us reliving our childhood, and you know, maybe we haven't matured in some people's eyes. Well, he was saying that immature is what boring people call fun people.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, I don't ever want to mature. I don't want to grow
me
up.
either. Lots of General Motors in here, Chevrolets. You've got the Willys over there with the Chev running gear in it. What's this 55 Ford doing here?
Well, this car, actually, I worked for a restoration shop a long time ago, and I did a lot of overtime on a guy's car. We were trying to get ready for a show, and I run up a pretty good labor bill against it. So he gave me this car to offset some of the labor. And at the time, it was pretty rough shape, and it was yellow and white, then it had been painted once. And it was just an old car, but when my mom died, my dad had one of these brand new, and when she died, he was pretty depressed. So my dad and I became partners on this car, and we restored it back then. And I did all the labor, and he spent all the money. Mm-hmm. He paid for the chrome and the upholstery and all the parts, and I did the body and paint and the assembly and stuff. And we were partners in the car. And then he died in 2006, and I got the car back. And it was all stock, and it needed quite a bit of work. And after I got it home, I realized it wasn't as important to me as I had thought. But then my wife said, you know, Dan, if you sell this car, you're going to be sorry, because it was your dad's. So I kind of went through it. I lowered it, put the caddy caps on it, did some things to it to make it look more like my car instead of his. And I'm really glad I kept it.
It's interesting on Crown Victorias how they, you know, everybody wanted a hard top, and some people had sedans for various reasons, but here you have something that is maybe better looking than a hard top, and it's a sedan. It's pretty ingenious what Ford pulled off with that.
That was Henry's, I guess he was really proud of the Queen Victoria thing, and the Crown Victoria was kind of the flagship of the 55 fleet. And with the slanted B-pillar, it's kind of reminiscent of some of them chopped Mercuries, maybe. Maybe that's what they were thinking. But the top on this car, the silhouette of the top is actually lower than a conventional hardtop. The windshield's about 2 inches shorter.
Mm-hmm. Continental kit on it, that nice touch from the past.
Yeah, that actually was an accessory kit. I had to make quite a few changes to it for it to fit properly. And I put a full faceplate on the back side of the tire. Typically they don't have that, but just kind of finished it off, made it a little cleaner.
292?
272.
272?
Two barrel.
Okay.
Real rocket. 2 barrel. It's kind of a honor to drive.
So it's a cruiser.
Got nice pipes on it,
yeah,
though.
it's not winning any races.
No, that's for sure.
All right. Well, you have over in the corner, you have a pickup truck that I have a hunch that you're not hauling any sheets of plywood or manure in it. Can we take a look at that?
Yeah, sure.
All right. 49 Chev pickup, very nice car. A lot of subtle touches I can see here that have been done. Tell us about this.
Well, actually, I got this truck. It looked quite a bit like it does now. The body and paint was done by Jerry Dunn in Port Angeles. And when I got the truck, it looked pretty much the way it does now, except it sit a lot higher. It had a pacer front end on it. It didn't steer right. It sit way too high. But the body and paint was so good, I thought, well, I'll change it. So we put a Mustang 2 front end under it, redid the chassis, put a new motor in it, did some wiring, did pretty much everything but body work and paint.
But a 2-inch chop, 3-inch chop?
I think it's 3. I think he said it was 3. Jerry saw the truck in the Saddle Roadster show after I did this to it, and it had different wheels on it when he had it. It really looks a lot better now, I think, but he agreed. He said, yeah, what you did, it needed to have done.
Made the right choices. Mm-hmm. In the car community, you seem to be, guys seem to be, and when I say guys, I mean everybody, you seem to either be a truck person or a car person. You've got a little of both going on.
Well, I kind of like everything. I mean, if I could have everything I own, this building would have to be 25 times bigger than it is. But the truck thing, I don't know, if you get the right truck and the right look, they're just cool.
So you got a 235 in there, or you got a 350 in there?
No, 350 Chevy V8.
Mm-hmm. Tried and true, everybody, not everybody, but pretty common to have the 350s in there. Is that always the best way to go, you think?
Well, they fit in. I mean, they're small motor, they got a lot of power, parts are cheap. You can run them really hard and they manage to stay together. Plus, I work at a Chevy dealer, so if I break something, I go to parts room, get another one.
So what have you seen, the fact that you work in a Chevy dealership, is that, are you really tuned into all the Chevs out there at the shows you go to, or are Studebakers tugging your heart and Plymouths tugging your heart?
Yeah.
Wide open to everything?
Oldsmobiles, Pontiac, Buick, Plymouth, Henry J. I don't care. If it's cool, I like it. You know, it doesn't have to be a brand. It just has to look good.
Well, one of the cars that you just mentioned is in your collection here. It's the one, the beautiful cars, everything you've shown us, it's been great, but the car that if I had to leave here and something, which one do you think it is?
The 56 Chev?
No, you're close. How about that 56 Olds?
The Olds? You take the Olds?
You bet. Let's go look at it.
All right, good.
I love Oldsmobiles from 49 to 60. I'm just crazy about them. And in those years, the best looking one is a 56. I just love 56 Olds. I like them better than 56 anything out there. This thing is gorgeous. I've had a 56 in my past. I had a 54 and a 52, all great cars. This in your collection, to my eyes and my taste, is the top of the heap. This is the good one.
Thank you. Thank you.
Tell us about this one.
Well, my dad, here again, I always talk about my dad, but he sold Oldsmobiles brand new in 1956. And my family, my uncle drag raced Oldsmobiles back then. So I kind of come from an Oldsmobile background. And when my dad had his brand new 56, I used to go out and sit in it, you know, with the great big steering wheel and the chrome on the headliner and the dash. And I just thought it was so cool. I just always remembered it. Well, I had a chance to buy this car. It was all restored, totally original when I got it. In fact, I'm told I'm the fourth owner of it, but I can't really document that. But it was, and I wanted to make it custom. I wanted to fill in the hood and take the door handles off and deck it and, you know, the tuck and roll and everything. But the body was so nice and the paint was so nice, I just couldn't bring myself to start welding up holes. So I did as much as I could do to it to have a custom theme without actually changing the car.
And you have your dummy spots on there, and your little gizmo to look at the changing traffic lights. And side pipes, that's probably the most, I mean, the whole car is striking, but the side pipes, there's a real touch from the 50s, 60s.
It took me a while to decide to put those on, but when I did, I was glad I did. And then the tuck and roll interior is totally 50s. A friend of mine that does my upholstery work did that for me right after I got the car. And the inside of it was really nice to start with, but it was all stock, so we took all that and put the tuck and roll in it.
Wheels, the wire wheels, are those Kelsey Hayes, or what do you got?
Those are 53 Cadillac Eldorado.
Oh, really?
They're the reproduction Eldorado wheels.
Uh-huh.
I had the caddy centers in them for a while, and then I thought, well, so I put the bullets in. Here again, more of a custom thing, I think. But.
In 56, the top of the Olds pecking order was the 98. This is an 88. To my eyes, the 98s were too long. The back end was too long on them. The 88s were the ones to look at. What do you think?
Well, yeah, the 98, the trunk, the portion between the back window and the end of the trunk's about 6-8 inches longer. The Super 88 had the wide chrome here, a little more chrome on the inside. I like the shorter version. It's more reminiscent of the Chevy body, I think, than the big long ones like the 98s were.
Yeah, the roof definitely has the general GM look to it.
Yeah.
They, you know, 56, they're gorgeous. 57, they're gorgeous. 58, they started looking like an aircraft carrier.
Yeah.
My apologies to all of you with 58 Oldses out there. But they went from being, you know, what happened in that period of time? Most of General Motors products started getting a little bit weird in 58. I love 58 Chevs, but
they just went too much, tried to put too much goop on them, I think. My favorite Olds actually is the 57. I think those are so cool. But this, you know, this one was available and it was a nice car and I like it. But yeah, you're right, after 58 things started downhill there for the big cars.
Yeah, for a little while there. In their day, they weren't the fastest car that GM was putting out, but they weren't slow either. What's the power plant on this?
This car's got a 324 cubic inch V8 in it with the 4-barrel. It's called a Rocket 88. Olds came out with their overhead valves in 1949, and they were supposed to be fast. And when my dad had his new one, he used to tell me how fast it is. Believe me, when you drive this car, I'm sure you'll agree that you've driven a lot faster stuff than this.
And the Olds motors, if you have a traditional hot rod or a rat rod or whatever, I think there's nothing prettier than an Olds motor sitting in them.
That's true, and because they came out in 49 and Chevy didn't come out with a V8 till 55, they had a pretty good head start. So the guys building hot rods, Oldsmobile was a motor of choice then.
And those early Oldsmobiles looked like tricked out Chevrolets, so you got your Chev with a V8 in it.
And speed equipment was available for them then, so it just worked out.
Dan, thank you very much for inviting us out here to your 4-speed museum. It's a great collection of cars.
Thank you. Pleasure having you here. Thank you.
All right, and this 56 Olds, thanks for letting me wheel out. And if by chance I don't return, that Mustang convertible over there is yours. We'll consider to trade straight across.
Really?
Yeah, you sound excited. And I hope you were excited. I hope you enjoyed the show. We had a great time here at Dan's Museum, and we wouldn't have a great time doing this if you weren't watching the show every week. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again next time. Till then, bye-bye. Thanks, Dan. See ya.